Ladies and gentlemen, I want to start with a simple question. What do you say when you talk to yourself? Because here's the truth. We all talk to ourselves, constantly, but the problem is, most of us aren't listening. Now imagine for just a moment, if the voice inside your head spoke to you the way a great leader speaks to their team. Would it build you up or tear you down? Would it ignite your courage or dim your spark? Here's what I've learned. The way we speak to ourselves determines the way we show up in the world. We are conditioned to be our own harshest critics. We replay mistakes, we magnify flaws, we whisper doubts. We often overlook one of the most influential voices in our lives, the voice inside our own heads. Every day, we carry on a silent, ongoing conversation with ourselves. It happens in the quiet moments, in the pauses between decisions, and especially when no one else is around. This internal dialogue shapes how we feel, how we behave, and ultimately how we live. The reality is this: the way we speak to ourselves becomes the lens through which we see the world and our place in it. When that voice is critical, harsh, or dismissive, it doesn't just affect our mood, it changes our self-image. We start believing that we're not good enough, not ready, or not worthy. We hesitate to take chances. We play small. We doubt ourselves even when we're capable. But when that voice is supportive, curious, and kind, something powerful happens. We begin to trust ourselves. We become more resilient. We take ownership of our growth instead of fearing our flaws. It's easy to underestimate the power of self-talk because it's so quiet. It's not on a billboard. It's not in a loud meeting. But its influence runs deep. It shows up in how we walk into a room. It shapes whether we speak up or stay silent. It even determines whether we see a challenge as a threat or an opportunity. Most of the battles we fight are not out there. They're in here, in our minds, in those small, internal moments. The good news: we have the power to change the tone of that voice. We can train it to speak with more kindness, more patience, and more courage. Like any habit, it takes awareness and practice. But the shift begins the moment you decide that the person in the mirror deserves respect, not just from others, but from you. When you speak to yourself with encouragement, when you replace "I can't" with "I'm learning," and "I failed" with "I grew," you don't just change your mindset, you change your momentum, and over time, those small changes in self-talk compound into real transformation. So if you want to change your life, start by changing your inner voice. Because how you speak to yourself is not just important, it's everything. Most of us would never speak to a friend the way we speak to ourselves. Think about it. If someone you care about made a mistake, would you call them a failure? If they were struggling, would you tell them to give up? Of course not. You'd probably offer them understanding, encouragement, maybe even a gentle reminder of their strength. But when it comes to our own inner dialogue, we often become our worst critic, relentless, impatient, and unforgiving. The truth is, we've been conditioned to believe that being hard on ourselves is somehow noble, that self-criticism is the path to improvement. But the research, and the reality, says otherwise. Constant negative self-talk doesn't lead to better performance. It leads to anxiety, burnout, and low self-worth. When your inner voice only highlights your shortcomings, it becomes harder to believe in your capacity for growth. You begin to internalize the idea that you are your mistakes, that you are your insecurities. Now imagine for just 3 days you flip that script. Imagine speaking to yourself like you would to someone you truly respect, someone whose potential you fully believe in even when they stumble. What would change if, instead of saying, "I'm not good enough," you said, "I'm just getting started"? What if, instead of "I always mess this up," you told yourself, "This is part of the process"? This isn't about blind optimism or empty affirmations. It's about choosing to be honest and hopeful at the same time. It's about acknowledging challenges without turning them into personal attacks. When you change the way you speak to yourself, you begin to shift your emotional posture. You stop bracing for failure and start leaning into opportunity. We don't get to choose every circumstance we face, but we do get to choose how we speak to ourselves in the face of them. And that choice makes all the difference. Because when your inner voice becomes a source of support rather than shame, you become more resilient, more open, more courageous, So try it for just 3 days. Catch that inner critic, pause, replace the script. Talk to yourself like someone who matters, because you do. And when you start believing that, everything begins to change. There's a quiet kind of strength that comes from the way we talk to ourselves, especially when things get hard. We all face moments that test us: failure, rejection, uncertainty. In those moments, the world outside might not always offer comfort or clarity, but the voice inside, that's something we can control. The challenge is, most people don't realize how unkind or dismissive that voice has become. We push through pain, criticize ourselves for feeling it, and expect resilience without nurturing it. But the truth is, the hardest moments in life don't require toughness. They require tenderness. For just 3 days, what if you gave yourself permission to be kind, not because you're weak, but because you finally understand that kindness is a strategy for survival? Think about it. When someone else is hurting, we don't shout at them to get over it. We listen. We hold space. We remind them they're not alone. And yet, when we feel lost or low, we often tell ourselves to toughen up or move on. That double standard can be brutal. Kindness is not a luxury. It's not something you earn after checking off a list of achievements. It's a basic human need, especially when directed inward. When you practice self-kindness, even for a short time, you create emotional safety. You create the space to breathe, to reflect, to regroup. You give yourself a chance to process what's really going on instead of just reacting to it. And kindness isn't passive, it's powerful. It's saying, I am allowed to feel this, without judgment. It's choosing to comfort rather than criticize. It's looking in the mirror and offering grace instead of guilt. The world may not always be gentle, but you can be. When you talk to yourself with kindness, you also set the tone for how you interact with everyone else. You become more patient, more compassionate, more grounded, and what starts as an internal shift becomes a ripple effect that impacts your work, your relationships, your energy. So for 3 days, try it. Start each morning with a reminder: I deserve kindness, even from myself. Watch how your posture changes. Watch how your decisions shift. Because once you begin treating yourself with the same care you offer others, you don't just feel better, you start to live better. Confidence is often misunderstood. We tend to think it comes from what we achieve, the awards, the recognition, the milestones we hit. But real, lasting confidence doesn't come from external accomplishments. It comes from within. It's not built in public, but in private. It's not rooted in success, but in integrity. The quiet kind of integrity you practice when no one's watching. And that begins with how you talk to yourself. When your inner voice aligns with your values, your words start to carry weight. You begin to trust yourself, not because you're perfect, but because you're consistent. You keep promises to yourself. You show up even when it's hard. You speak to yourself in a way that reflects who you're trying to become, not just who you've been. That's where confidence is born, not in the big moments, but in the small ones that stack up quietly over time. Most of us think, once I succeed, I'll feel confident. But that's backwards. You don't wait for confidence to show up. You build it. You build it every time you talk to yourself with respect. Every time you choose patience over panic. Every time you remind yourself, I am capable of figuring this out. And here's the irony. External achievements can sometimes mask internal insecurity. You can be successful on paper, but still doubt yourself daily. That's what happens when your self-worth depends on outcomes. But when your confidence is grounded in how you speak to yourself, in the integrity of that relationship, you don't crumble when things go wrong. You recalibrate, you grow. Integrity with yourself means showing up honestly. It means calling yourself out when necessary, but not tearing yourself down. It means being your own guide, not your own bully. When you trust your own voice, you stop looking to everyone else for permission. You stop outsourcing your self-esteem to other people's opinions. So the next time you're chasing confidence, don't just look at your resume. Look at your routine. Look at your thoughts. Look at the way you talk to yourself after a failure. That's where confidence is either crushed or created. If you want to feel unshakable on the outside, you have to start being trustworthy on the inside. And that starts with how you speak to you every single day. Leadership is often associated with titles, authority, or how many people follow you. But true leadership begins long before any of that. It begins with leading yourself. Before you can effectively guide others, inspire a team, or influence a room, you have to learn how to influence the one person who's with you every second of every day, yourself. Self-leadership isn't flashy. It's not about making bold declarations in public. It's about quiet decisions made in private. It's how you manage your mindset when things go wrong. It's how you handle your emotions when no one's watching. And most importantly, it's how you talk to yourself when you fall short, feel stuck, or face fear. That internal leadership, your ability to guide your own thoughts and actions, is the foundation for everything else. Think about any great leader you admire. They don't just give direction, they embody it. They model resilience, clarity, and purpose. They do the hard inner work so they can serve others from a place of strength. The same goes for you. If your inner voice is constantly critical or filled with doubt, it's incredibly difficult to lead with confidence, authenticity, or empathy. You can't pour from an empty cup, and you certainly can't lead from an unstable core. When you speak to yourself with clarity, compassion, and conviction, you build trust within, and that trust shows. It gives you the courage to take risks, the humility to admit mistakes, and the strength to keep going when things get tough. It's what people feel when they're around someone grounded. You can't fake it. You have to live it. Leading yourself means being accountable to your own standards. It means setting the tone for your own growth, not waiting for someone else to do it. It means choosing discipline over comfort and curiosity over self-judgment. And it all starts with the daily dialogue happening in your head. So if you want to lead others with confidence, start by listening to how you speak to yourself. Are you empowering yourself or undermining your own potential? Are you leading with purpose or reacting with fear? When your inner leadership is strong, your outer leadership becomes natural. Because the first person you must earn trust from is you. Everything else flows from there. We spend so much of our lives trying to prove ourselves, to others, to society, even to people who may never notice. We strive to earn recognition, respect, and approval from the outside world. But here's something we rarely consider. What if the respect that matters most is the one we show ourselves? What if the most powerful shift you could make was to treat yourself like someone who matters? Because you do, but the way we talk to ourselves doesn't always reflect that truth. We downplay our achievements, we magnify our flaws, we push through exhaustion without offering ourselves a moment of care. If we treated a close friend the way we often treat ourselves, that relationship wouldn't last. And yet, we carry on ignoring, criticizing, pressuring, day after day, not realizing that every unkind word we whisper to ourselves chips away at our own foundation. Here's the good news. We can change that narrative. It starts with awareness, but it's built with intention. Imagine what would happen if, for just a few days, you chose to speak to yourself with the same compassion you'd offer to someone you deeply value. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to have it all figured out. You simply need to remember that your worth isn't conditional. It's inherent. When you begin treating yourself like someone who matters, your whole posture toward life shifts. You stop seeking validation in places that can't give it. You make decisions from confidence instead of fear. You set healthier boundaries. You hold your head a little higher, not out of arrogance, but out of self-respect. This isn't about ego. It's about coming home to yourself. It's about recognizing that the relationship you have with you sets the tone for every other relationship in your life. When you believe you matter, you stop settling for less. You stop apologizing for taking up space. You stop playing small just to make others comfortable. Start small, speak gently, celebrate your efforts, forgive your missteps, show up for yourself, not just in grand gestures, but in quiet, consistent ways. Because when you begin to treat yourself with the dignity and care you truly deserve, you don't just feel better. You rise, you lead, you inspire. All because you finally realized you matter. and it's time you started acting like it.